What if I told you that when a client hands you a $5,000 check for a design you just spent like 3 weeks creating, and you hand over those final polished digital files, they actually don't own the artwork.
Yeah, it is the ultimate shock to the system for most creatives.
Right. In fact, depending on the paperwork you didn't sign, they might actually be illegally using your creation the second they hit publish.
Oh, absolutely. You spend years, mastering color theory and typography and the absolute bleeding edge of design software.
Yeah, building this jaw-dropping portfolio.
Exactly. You build this portfolio, but the moment you step into the marketplace, you realize that none of that protects you from the brutal mechanics of business.
The unwritten rules, right, like contracts, pricing psychology, and intellectual property.
Yeah, the stuff they don't always teach you in art school.
So today, we are tearing the lid off those mechanics. Welcome to this deep dive. Consider this your ultimate accelerated masterclass in the business side of the creative process.
For sure, because treating your creativity as a legally protected, highly profitable business is really the only way to survive.
I mean, we are unpacking an incredibly dense, immensely valuable resource today. It's chapter 16 of the book, Graphic Design Reference plus Specification.
Which features core excerpts from Managing the Design Process by Terry Lee Stone.
Right, and we're going to dissect the standard forms, the contract negotiations, and the absolute necessities of running a design project, from that terrifying blank canvas all the way to the final cleared check.
Because if you don't master the framework will absolutely master you.
Oh man, that is so true. But before we jump into the deep end, a quick but important note for you listening. If you want more invaluable resources and deep dives just like this one, you need to subscribe to the channel right now.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, and furthermore, if you want to hold this exact wealth of knowledge in your own two hands, you can get a physical copy of the book we're referencing today by scanning the QR code on your screen or by clicking the book link below.
Having a physical desk reference for these legal and financial frameworks is something you're going to want an arm's reach away.
Definitely. It functions as an essential survival kit.
It really does. So, for our journey today, we are going to trace the chronological life cycle of a commercial design project.
Where do we start?
We'll start by pouring the creative briefs that prevent disaster. From there, we transition into the math.
Yeah, the math.
I know. But we have to explore the variables of budgeting, calculating your true rates, and building estimates that actually hold water.
Right, and once the math is done, we have to tackle the psychology of the money talk. The art of the deal.
And how to stop those dreaded endless revisions.
Oh, we will definitely get into that.
Yeah. We will then break down the actual flow of capital using 8 distinct payment strategies. And finally, we land on that initial bombshell, who actually owns the final product.
Decoding the complex world of intellectual property and licensing. So let's start with the foundation. The text brings up this old computer science adage that I think perfectly frames the entire design process, which is garbage in, garbage out.
Oh, yeah. Such a classic.
I was visualizing this and designing without a rigorous creative brief feels to me like a general contractor trying to build a custom house for a family based entirely on a game of charades.
Just wildly guessing what they want.
Right. The client is just waving their arms around like, you want a roof like this? Okay, 3 bedrooms, a pool.
And you might build a structurally flawless, gorgeous Victorian mansion.
But if the client actually needed a single-story ranch for their aging parents, the project is a total unmitigated failure.
Exactly. The craftsmanship becomes completely irrelevant if it doesn't solve the specific problem.
Right.
The text emphasizes this heavily. A talented designer can certainly, rely on their gut instincts.
Yeah.
They can launch into a vague assignment and produce something visually stunning. But if that solution isn't anchored to a solid, documented understanding of the client's business objective, it has no defensive armor.
No armor at all.
It becomes incredibly easy for the client or the stakeholders to simply dismiss it because it's untethered to reality.
Which is exactly how you end up in those nightmare feedback loops, where the client just says, make it pop, or it just doesn't feel dynamic enough.
Oh, the worst phrases in the English language.
I know, they use those vague critiques because there's no strategic foundation to point back to. So how do we pour that concrete? The text outlines a very deliberate chronological process for generating a creative brief.
And it starts long before you ever open your design software. The sequence is critical. Step 1 is developing a highly targeted, customized list of questions.
So not just a template,
Right, you aren't just sending a boilerplate form, you are interrogating the specific nature of their industry. Step 2 is asking your point of contact to identify every single person in their organization who needs to participate in this briefing process.
Oh, I can see the trap there instantly.
What do you mean?
Well, if you spend 3 hours interviewing the marketing intern and, like, mid-level manager, but the CEO is the one who ultimately signs the check.
And holds the veto power.
Exactly. You are building your house on a terrifyingly fragile fault line.
You are almost guaranteeing a late-stage veto. You must identify all the stakeholders. Step 3 is conducting the actual interviews.
Right.
And the text makes a phenomenal recommendation here, which is to meet these selected people one-on-one.
Oh, interesting. Why not all together?
Because in a corporate group setting, office politics immediately hijack the room.
Oh, yeah. Junior staff will defer to the boss.
Exactly. Department heads will posture. When you isolate them one-on-one, you get candid, unfiltered truths about what the project really needs to achieve.
And you probably uncover massive internal disagreements that the company wasn't even aware of.
All the time. Now, in step 4, the text discusses capturing all this data.
And this is where I want to raise a massive, flashing neon legal warning for you guys listening. The book suggests having 2 design team members present, one to lead the conversation and maintain eye contact, and one to take detailed notes.
Which is brilliant.
It is. But if you are a solo freelancer, the temptation is to just pull out your phone, set it on the table, and hit record on a voice memo app.
Oh, yeah. Careful with that.
Right. Depending on where you operate, recording a conversation without explicit, documented permission isn't just a faux pas, it is a serious crime.
Yeah. The 2-party consent laws are no joke. You can never, ever assume you have the right to record someone's voice.
So what's the workaround?
It's incredibly simple. At the very top of the meeting, you just say, hey, to ensure I am fully present and listening to you rather than just staring at my notepad, do you mind if I record audio of this meeting strictly for my own internal reference?
And they usually say yes.
99% of the time they will say yes, but that explicit verbal confirmation is your shield.
That's great advice. So once you have mountains of notes and transcripts, step 5 is compiling and analyzing those findings.
Right. You are sifting through the data looking for consensus. But more importantly, you are hunting for the tangents and the contradictions.
Like if the head of sales says the target audience is teenage gamers, and the head of product development thinks the audience is middle-aged tech executives.
Exactly. If that happens, you have to halt the train immediately. That is where the designer acts as a high-level Quavert consultant.
You uncover these hidden misalignments and force the client to resolve them.
Before a single design hour is billed, because otherwise you're designing for 2 different worlds.
Wow. Okay, so once they agree, step 6 is synthesizing all of this into the actual creative brief document. Step 7 is sending it back to the client for their formal written approval.
Step 8 is distributing that locked brief to your internal design team so everyone shares the same brain.
And finally, step 9 is ongoing evaluation. Every concept your team generates is judged relentlessly against that brief.
Okay, that is the timeline of creating the document. But let's open the document itself. The text outlines 10 absolute non-negotiables, the 10 pillars that must be in every single creative brief.
I want us to really dissect these because this is the core of the strategic design process. Pillar number 1 is the background.
Right.
This includes the summary of who the client is, and specifically their SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Crucial stuff.
Let me play devil's advocate for a second, though. If I am hired to design a logo for, I don't know, a local artisan bakery, why on earth do I care about their business threats? Shouldn't my only focus be making a beautiful, appetizing logo?
See, if you just make a beautiful logo, you are a decorator.
Okay. Ouch!
I mean it. If you use their threats to shape the logo, you are a strategic partner. Let's look at your bakery. If their SWOT analysis reveals that their primary threat is a massive, sterile corporate coffee chain opening a location right across the street, that completely dictates your visual strategy.
Oh, I see.
Your typography, your color palette, your brand voice, they shouldn't try to look slick, polished, and corporate. You can't beat the corporation at being a corporation.
Right, so instead, the threat dictates that your design needs to lean heavily into being hyperlocal, slightly imperfect, deeply human.
Fiercely independent, exactly. The business threat provides the exact coordinates for your visual differentiation.
That fundamentally shifts how I view the discovery phase. You aren't just collecting facts, you are collecting weapons.
Perfectly said.
Pillar number 2 is drivers. What is the goal of the project and what are the top 3 objectives? This sounds simple, but I imagine clients muddy the waters here constantly.
Oh, they muddy it because they confuse the tool with the outcome.
Give me an example.
A client will sit across from you and say, our primary objective is to build a new e-commerce website.
And that's not an objective.
A website is not an objective. A website is a deliverable. The objective is the behavior they want that website to force.
Like, is the objective to increase average order value by 20%?
Right. Or is it to reduce customer service phone calls by making the return policy visually impossible to miss? Is it to capture a younger demographic?
You have to aggressively push past the deliverable to find the actual business driver.
Exactly. Which leads directly into pillar number 3, overview. What is the project and what is the opportunity?
This feels like the elevator pitch.
It is.
If you are in an elevator with a stranger, how do you describe what you are doing in 2 sentences?
It serves as the ultimate anchor. 6 weeks into a complex project, when feature creep is happening and everyone is exhausted, you bring the team back to the overview.
But wait, are we still designing a lightweight mobile app for college students on the go? Or have we somehow drifted into building a dense desktop portal?
The overview stops the drift.
I love that. Pillar number 4 is audience. Who are we talking to? What is their current perception of the client? And most importantly, why should they care?
That last question is the filter for everything. Consumers are bombarded by thousands of commercial metrics every single day. If you don't define the audience's core psychological motivation, your design is invisible.
Right. Imagine designing a brochure for a high-end wealth management firm targeting 50-year-old executives versus an energy drink targeting 18-year-old esports players.
Completely different worlds. The executive values stability, legacy, and trust, so your design uses heavy paper stock, classic serif typography, subdued navy blues.
And the gamer values hyper-stimulation, disruption, speed. So your design uses aggressive angles, neon colors.
The audience's desires dictate the visual language, period.
Okay, pillar number 5, competitors.
Yeah.
Who are they? What are they telling the audience, and what is our SWOT analysis on them? Basically, we need to know what the rest of the room is wearing so we don't show up in the exact same outfit.
Exactly, and it gives you the ultimate shield against client pushback.
How so?
Well, if every other financial advisor in your city uses navy blue and gold with a logo featuring a lighthouse,
Which they always do.
right, your brief should explicitly document that fact. Later, when you present a brand identity using vibrant teal and stark geometric shapes, the client might say, this doesn't feel like a financial firm.
And you point to the brief and say, that is the point. We are executing a strategy to create immediate visual differentiation.
You aren't being weird for the sake of being weird, you are being strategic.
Okay, pillar number 6 is tone. How should we be communicating? What adjectives describe the feeling? I feel like words like professional or modern are incredibly dangerous here.
Oh, they are dangerous because they are highly subjective. Professional to a white shoe law firm means austere and traditional.
But professional to a Silicon Valley startup means transparent and casual.
Right. The brief has to drill down into highly specific adjectives. Are we authoritative but approachable? Are we irreverent and disruptive?
Locking this down prevents the classic late-stage client complaint of, this feels a little too playful.
Because you can simply open the brief to page 2, where they explicitly sign their name next to the adjective playful.
So smart. Pillar number 7 is message. What exactly are we saying, and what is the one single thing we want the audience to take away? I have to imagine clients struggle with just one thing.
It is agonizing for them. Clients want to say everything. We are the most affordable, and we have the highest quality, and our customer service is award-winning, and we use sustainable materials.
Like we have been in business for 50 years.
Exactly. If you try to emphasize all 5 of those things visually, the audience absorbs nothing. The hierarchy collapses.
The brief forces the client to make the painful choice of prioritizing the single most potent message.
And then the design builds a visual hierarchy around that singular point.
Pillar number 8 is visuals. Are we developing new imagery, or are we relying on existing assets?
This is a purely logistical pillar, but it holds massive budget implications.
I can imagine.
If the client assumes visuals means you are hiring a photographer, scouting locations, and shooting custom lifestyle photography over 3 days.
And you assumed visuals meant buying $50 worth of stock photography.
The project budget is going to detonate. Pinning down the origin of the visual assets prevents catastrophic misunderstandings.
Makes total sense. Pillar number 9, details. The mandatories, the format parameters, the absolute limitations.
The immovable guardrails. Does the logo have to physically fit onto the barrel of a tiny promotional pen?
Does the final printed piece have to weigh under 1 ounce to qualify for a specific bulk mailing rate?
Does the packaging have to use only 2 spot colors to keep printing costs down? These are not creative suggestions. They are the physical laws of physics that your design must operate within.
And finally, pillar number 10, people. Who are we reporting to, and who exactly holds the power to approve this work?
If a designer ignores every other pillar, they must memorize this one. Define the approval chain.
Because the single greatest tragedy in commercial art is working for weeks, getting enthusiastic approval from the marketing director,
Finalizing the production files, and then, on the eve of the launch, the elusive CEO swoops in.
They were never briefed. They never saw the foundational documents.
And they arbitrarily veto the entire campaign because they simply don't like the color orange.
Brutal.
The brief must explicitly map out who holds the final yes and mandate that those people review the brief itself.
Okay, so you have this incredibly robust 10-pillar document. The walls are up, but I noticed a crucial nuance in the text. It introduces another term alongside the creative brief, the design criteria.
Yeah.
I've always used those terms interchangeably. Why do we need 2 different documents for a single project? Isn't that just redundant paperwork?
It sounds redundant until you understand the distinct functions of each. The creative brief is the statement of the problem.
Okay.
It outlines the landscape, the audience, the business goals, and the constraints. Very often, the raw data for the brief comes directly from the client.
And the design criteria.
The design criteria, however, is the statement of the solution. It is the creative team's internal strategy for exactly how they intend to solve the problem outlined in the brief.
So if the creative brief says we need to cross this massive river to reach a younger demographic, the design criteria is the architect coming back and saying we're going to build a suspension bridge using exposed steel and neon lighting.
That is a perfect analogy. The text emphasizes that generating a formal design criteria document is an absolute necessity when dealing with clients who are notoriously indecisive.
Or who give contradictory feedback.
Right, it acts as a protective buffer. You present the design criteria to the client to ensure total philosophical alignment before you unleash your creative team.
Because the designers and illustrators actually executing the work represent the highest hourly cost in your firm.
Exactly. You do not want them burning 40 expensive hours exploring a soft watercolor aesthetic if the client secretly envisions sharp, hyper-modern 3D renders. The design criteria locks in the aesthetic approach before the meter starts running.
So if we zoom all the way out, what is the ultimate overarching value of this entire rigorous briefing process?
It provides immense value to both sides of the table. For the client, the sheer act of answering these 10 pillars forces them to organize their own chaotic thoughts.
It builds internal consensus.
Yes. And psychologically, because they helped forge the brief, they have deep buy-in to the process. They feel ownership over the parameters.
And for the designer.
The value is pure armor. It uncovers the hidden landmines, it prevents scope creep, and it provides the only objective metric for success.
When you present your work, you aren't standing there saying, I chose this typography because I think it looks cool.
You are saying, I chose this typography because the brief mandated that we establish immediate authority with high net worth investors.
It strips the subjective emotion out of the presentation room and replaces it with objective strategy. I love that. But a blueprint is useless if the client can't afford the materials. How do we transition from defining the scope of the problem to actually putting a price tag on the solution? That brings us to segment 2, the math, the psychology, and the variables of budgeting.
This is the exact moment where the artistic brain panics and the business brain has to take over.
And what's fascinating here is a reality check that text offers right at the start. Most designers live in fear that they're going to lose a pitch purely because their estimate was a few $100s higher than the competition.
It is a massive misconception.
The text explicitly states that pricing is only one factor in the client's decision matrix.
We obsess over the final number at the bottom of the page, but clients are running a much more complex internal calculus. Yes, the budget is a hard constraint, but what are the other invisible weights on the scale?
Like relevant experience.
Exactly. If you charge 20% more than the other firm, but your portfolio proves you have successfully solved this exact industry problem 3 times before, the client will pay the premium for reduced risk.
Then there is the elusive right attitude.
Are you actually eager to do the work? Clients are human beings. They want to spend their time collaborating with people who are enthusiastic about their business.
The text also calls out good chemistry, which basically translates to, do we actually enjoy talking to this person?
Never underestimate the power of simply being a pleasant, engaged human being. People buy from people they like.
And perceived reliability. This starts from the very first email, doesn't it?
Did you show up to the initial Zoom call on time? Was your proposal cleanly formatted and free of typos?
If you are disorganized and sloppy during the courtship phase, the client will instinctively assume your file management and deadline adherence will be a nightmare during the marriage.
Furthermore, the power of a warm referral can almost entirely negate a higher price point. If a trusted colleague tells a client, this designer is expensive, but they will absolutely deliver without any drama, price becomes a secondary concern.
That should be a huge relief to anyone listening. You aren't just competing on a spreadsheet. But eventually a number has to go on the spreadsheet. The text breaks down several key factors in pricing a job. Let's walk through the levers that push the price up or down.
The first lever is obviously the scope of work. What are the sheer physical deliverables? But right behind that is resources.
Who on your team is executing this?
Right. If the project requires your most senior, award-winning art director, the cost scales up. If it's production work that a junior designer can handle, it scales down. Do you need to hire external contractors like a specialized 3D animator? That gets baked into the cost.
Scheduling seems like a massive, often overlooked lever. If a client comes to me on a Tuesday and says they need a full brand identity by Friday, that changes the math completely.
The rush fee is a very real, very necessary mechanism. To accommodate that absurd schedule, you're going to have to pause other paying clients, pay your team overtime, and endure significant stress.
The client must pay a premium for monopolizing your immediate bandwidth.
Exactly. Another huge variable is the nature of the client themselves. Are you dealing with a nimble, decisive founder who can give approval in 1 hour?
Or are you dealing with a multinational bureaucracy that requires a 6-person committee to review every single shade of blue over 3 weeks of meetings?
You have to build the hidden cost of project management and endless meetings into the estimate.
The text also mentions expertise as a variable. I find this tricky. Like, if a client asks me to design something in a specialized software that I've never used, I can't ethically bill them for the 40 hours I spent watching tutorials to learn it, right?
Correct. You cannot penalize the client for your own educational deficits. However, the inverse is where the real money is made.
Tell me more.
If you have spent 10 years becoming one of the world's leading experts in that specific software, you don't charge them less just because you can execute the task quickly.
Right.
You charge a massive premium because you are bringing a decade of hyper-specialized efficiency to their problem. You are charging for the years, not the hours.
I love that phrase, charging for the years. And finally, the text brings up the harsh reality of cash flow. Sometimes your pricing isn't dictated by the market. It's dictated by the fact that your agency has payroll due in 2 weeks, and you need capital flowing through the door immediately.
It is the stark reality of running a business. Sometimes you take a lower margin job simply to keep the engine running while you hunt for higher margin work.
Let's drill down into the mechanics of calculating the actual hourly rate. The book provides a very practical starting point if you're staring at a blank wall. It references using industry benchmarks like the AIGA Annual Wage and Salary Survey in the US.
It is a great mathematical baseline. You find the median annual salary for a designer with your specific years of experience in your specific geographic region.
Let's say that number is $80,000.
You divide that salary by the number of billable hours in a working year. The text strongly suggests using 1,500 hours as your divisor, not 2,000.
Why is that?
This is crucial because it accounts for vacations, sick days, and the hundreds of hours you spend on non-billable administrative work, like answering emails, doing your taxes, and pitching new clients.
So $80,000 divided by 1,500 billable hours gives you a baseline hourly rate of roughly $53 an hour.
It gives you a mathematical anchor.
But the text also points out a hilarious and frustrating reality about trying to figure out what your peers charge. People in the creative industry get incredibly weird and defensive about money.
Oh, they will deflect the question, they will be vague, or they will straight up lie about their rates to make themselves look more successful.
Unless you're talking to a deeply trusted mentor who is not a direct local competitor, getting an honest answer about pricing over a cup of coffee is nearly impossible.
It is the toxic collision of the cultural taboo around discussing money and the fragile insecurity of the creative ego. Everyone is terrified of finding out they're either drastically overcharging and losing work or drastically undercharging and leaving money on the table.
Speaking of hilarious moments in the text, there is a literal missing piece of information that made me laugh out loud. The book confidently says, "Here's a formula for determining your hourly rate based on your actual costs of staying in business." And then it just moves immediately to the next paragraph.
I know, the actual mathematical formula is completely absent from the excerpt.
It is the ultimate draw the rest of the owl moment.
But to the text's credit, it immediately clarifies an important philosophical concept regarding that phantom formula. It notes that whatever mechanical calculation you use to determine your bare-bones operational costs, it fundamentally fails to factor in two massive abstract variables:
The market value of the work to the client's business and the premium for your specific expertise.
Exactly. This introduces the critical difference between the break-me rate and the published rate.
How should a designer utilize these two different numbers?
Your break-even hourly rate is the absolute rock-bottom lowest amount you can charge just to keep the lights on without losing money. It covers your base salary, your studio rent, your software subscriptions, and your electricity.
If you calculate a job at your break-even rate, you are not growing a business. You are simply treading water.
Right. Your published hourly rate is the number you actually quote to the world. This rate includes a healthy profit margin designed to grow your business, and it counts for your quarterly tax obligations.
Well, you need both.
Calculating every potential project using both rates is essential. The break-even number shows you your absolute floor the moment you must walk away from the negotiation. The published number is your optimum target.
But I want to push back on the very concept of an hourly rate as the sole metric of value. Let's say I am a client and I go to two different design agencies. Both agencies tell me their published rate is $150 an hour. But when they hand me their final estimates for my new e-commerce website, Agency A quotes me $8,000 and Agency B quotes me $35,000. If their hourly value is identical, why are the estimates so wildly different?
Because estimating the number of hours a project will take is, fundamentally, an educated projection of the future. The two agencies are envisioning completely different futures.
How so?
Agency B, the $35,000 quote, might work much more methodically. Their estimate includes hours for a dedicated user experience researcher to conduct focus groups, a specialized copywriter to craft the brand voice, and a senior art director to oversee the visual fidelity.
So they're estimating far more hours to achieve a robust, high-end result.
Right. Agency A, the $8,000 quote, might just be planning to have one mid-level designer modify a pre-built WordPress template over a few days. The hourly rate is the same, but the density of the hours is radically different.
So evaluating a project isn't just about doing the math, it's about context. Everyone knows the story of the mechanic who charges $100 to hit an engine with a hammer. It's $1 for the swing and $99 for knowing exactly where to hit.
Precisely. You have to evaluate your final number against the reality of the client's enterprise. Are you designing a logo for a neighborhood bakery, or are you designing a logo for a global airline?
The physical act of drawing the logo might take the exact same number of hours.
But the value of that logo to a global airline, which will stamp it on billions of dollars worth of aircraft, uniforms, and advertising, is astronomically higher. Your pricing must scale to reflect the value you are injecting into the client's business, regardless of the hours spent.
Before we move off pricing, there is a very stern legal note in this section of the text that we have to highlight. We just talked about how difficult it is to get peers to discuss their rates.
Yeah.
But let's say you do manage to get 20 independent freelance designers in your city into a room. You have to be incredibly careful about what you agree upon.
Yes, this is the antitrust warning. Discussing broad pricing philosophies or business strategies with colleagues is perfectly fine and healthy, but if that room of independent designers decides, hey, clients are undercutting us, let's all form a pact and agree to never charge less than $2,000 for a website, you have just crossed a massive legal line.
That is textbook price fixing and collusion.
The text notes that recognized trade unions, like the Graphic Artists Guild in the U.S., operate under entirely different, highly specific labor laws that legally allow them to publish pricing floors and ethical guidelines. But independent business owners banding together to set market rates is a fast track to severe legal penalties.
So you've navigated the antitrust laws, you've done the math, you know your break-even floor, you know your published rate, and you've evaluated the client's context. Now comes the part that gives everyone a knot in their stomach.
Segment 3. The art of the deal.
Exactly. You actually have to look the client in the eye or sit across from them on a Zoom call and ask for the money.
Welcome to the psychology of negotiation. The text makes a deeply empathetic observation here. The vast majority of designers are driven by the pursuit of art, not the pursuit of capital.
They got into this industry to create beautiful, impactful things, not to become ruthless accountants.
But the reality is that survival requires capital. And this is where internal psychology becomes your biggest liability. Money negotiations coincide directly with issues of self-worth.
That's so true.
If you are harboring imposter syndrome, if you do not genuinely, in your bones, believe in the financial value your design brings to a client's business, you will inevitably fold the moment the client pushes back. You will discount your own work before they even ask you to.
You have to completely reframe the dynamic in your head.
Yeah.
You aren't standing there asking for a charitable handout. You are an expert offering fair compensation terms for a strategic business asset you are building for them.
Absolutely.
To help navigate this, the text provides a rapid-fire list of tactical tips for the money talk. I want to throw these out, and I want you to give me the practical why behind them. First tip, be explicitly clear on what the price includes.
Because ambiguity breeds conflict and eats your profit. Does your $5,000 price tag for the annual report include the physical printing costs? Or does it only cover the delivery of the digital design files?
If you aren't explicitly clear, the client will naturally assume it includes everything, and you will suddenly find yourself eating a massive invoice from the local print shop.
Yes.
Second tip, define the payment terms. Everyone knows what net 30 is, but why is it so critical to write it down?
Net 30 means the client legally agrees to pay the invoice within 30 days of receiving it. If you do not explicitly define the terms on paper, you aren't a vendor anymore. You've unknowingly become an interest-free bank for your client's cash flow problems.
They will pay you whenever it is convenient for them, which could be 90 or 120 days from now, leaving you entirely unable to pay your own rent. Third tip, stick to the fee and use change orders for increases. Let's role play this. Imagine it's 4:00 p.m. on a Friday. The client calls and casually says, "Hey, I know we're wrapping up the website, but can we just add a quick little e-commerce store with about 50 products? Thanks." The amateur designer says, "Sure, I guess." What does the pro designer say?
The pro designer says, absolutely, we can definitely build that out for you. I will draw up a change order for that additional scope and send it over for your signature so we can get started.
A change order is a formalized mathematical document stating that the client has requested something outside the boundaries of the original contract, and here is the exact additional cost to execute it.
The psychological power of the phrase change order forces the client to acknowledge that new ideas cost new money, rather than just sneaking free labor into the existing budget.
Fourth tip, integrate the schedule with regular cost reviews.
Never, ever wait until the final invoice to surprise the client with the news that they blew through their budget 3 weeks ago. Keep them constantly updated on the burn rate.
Like, hey, just a quick update. We are currently at 80% of our allotted hours, but we are only 50% of the way through the project phases due to the extra revisions. We need to course correct or expand the budget.
Exactly. Transparency is key.
Fifth tip, get it in writing specifically. Purchase orders.
A verbal agreement over a handshake is worth the oxygen it takes to speak it, which is nothing. A purchase order, or PO, generated by the client's accounting department is a legal mechanism.
It means the money has been officially allocated and frozen in their system to pay you.
Never start pushing pixels without a signed agreement or a valid PO number.
And lastly, the text suggests considering incentives.
This is the classic carrot and stick approach to cash flow. Offer a small carrot, a 2% discount on the total invoice if they pay within 10 days, which incentivizes their accounting department to prioritize your check.
Or, conversely, wield the stick. Clearly outline a 1.5% monthly compounding late fee penalty for slow payers. This disincentivizes them from treating you like a zero-interest credit card. Those are phenomenal defensive tactics. But let's confront the toughest scenario every designer faces. You've presented the definitive estimate. You slide the paper across the table. The client looks at the number, genuinely gasps, and says, "We love your work, but we simply cannot afford that."
The immediate panicked instinct of the insecure designer is to instantly slash their price by 30% just to win the job. You must fight that instinct.
Never lower your rate for the same amount of work, right?
Yeah.
It tells the client you were overcharging them to begin with.
Yes. Instead, you have to investigate what "can't afford it" actually means mechanically. Is this a permanent lack of funds or just a temporary cash flow bottleneck?
If it's a bottleneck, maybe you can extend the project timeline over 6 months to spread out the payments into smaller, digestible chunks.
Or we look at the scope. Okay, You can't afford the $30,000 comprehensive package that includes the website, the full logo system, and the vehicle wraps. For your budget of $15,000, we can execute the core website and a simplified primary logo.
You reduce the deliverables to meet the reality of their wallet.
But you also have to ask yourself a deeply selfish question. What secondary value do you get out of this project? If they truly can't afford your full rate, is the project going to result in an absolutely stunning, award-winning portfolio piece that will attract massive, high-paying clients next year?
Will working on this project force you to learn a highly marketable, new technical skill on their dime? Will it give you direct access to collaborate with an incredible high-status agency?
If the secondary non-monetary benefits are exceptionally high, it might be a strategic choice to negotiate the fee down, but it must be an intentional strategic investment in your own future, not a reflex of panic.
Okay, we have to talk about the absolute bane of every commercial artist's existence. Revisions. I always visualize revisions like a leaky faucet in a house. You quote a fixed fee of $10,000, you calculate your hours, and you think you're making a fantastic profit margin. And then, drip. The client emails. Can we make the logo 10% bigger?
Drip.
My wife doesn't really care for this shade of green. Can we explore autumn colors?
Drip.
Let's try a completely different font for the headlines. Slowly, drop by agonizing drop, your profit margin completely drains away, your hours skyrocket, and you realize you are essentially working for minimum wage.
The leaky faucet is the most accurate metaphor possible. Revisions will bankrupt a studio if they aren't contained. The text's advice here is entirely blunt. You must explicitly, legally define what a revision and a round of revisions means within the text of your original agreement.
Does a round mean one single consolidated document of feedback compiled from all stakeholders? Or does it mean 5 different chaotic emails arriving from 5 different people over the course of a week?
You have to define the mechanics. State exactly how many rounds are included in the base price. The industry standard is usually 2 or 3, and stick to it with absolute discipline.
And when they inevitably cross that line and ask for round 4,
You deploy the change order mentality. You are professional, polite, but completely unyielding. We are absolutely happy to explore this third, entirely new layout direction. Just so you know, we have fully utilized our 3 included rounds of revisions, so this new exploration will trigger our hourly overage rate of $150 an hour. Should I proceed and generate a new estimate for this phase?
wow. And the text gets very philosophical here. And it's a point every creative needs to hear. Practicing your craft without fair compensation doesn't just hurt your own bank account, it actively damages the entire design industry.
It trains clients to believe that a designer's time is worthless and infinitely elastic. You have to hold the line for the sake of the profession.
But the text does offer one very important caveat where you absolutely cannot charge for revisions. It's called designer fault.
This requires brutal honesty with yourself. If the revision is required because you completely ignored a mandatory physical requirement explicitly stated in the creative brief, or your final file was formatted incorrectly and failed at the printer, or your typography had glaring spelling errors that you missed, that is poor professional performance.
That is designer fault.
Yeah,
You absolutely cannot charge the client to fix your own incompetence.
exactly.
Fair enough. Let's look at the actual physical documents that carry these terrifying numbers. The text details a specific progression, outlining 3 distinct types of estimates you will use throughout the courtship.
Think of these estimates as a funnel of accuracy. At the very top, where it's wide and vague, is the ballpark estimate.
The client calls you on a Tuesday and says, "We need a complete rebrand for our restaurant." Roughly, what does that cost?
You don't have a brief yet, you haven't done the discovery, and the scope is entirely murky, so you provide a massive, sweeping range. Based on similar past projects we've executed, a full rebrand usually falls anywhere from $15,000 to $40,000, depending on the final scope.
The only purpose of the ballpark estimate is to establish if you are even operating in the same financial universe. If they say, "Oh, our budget was $500, you end the conversation politely and save everyone weeks of wasted time.
Assuming they survive the ballpark, we move down the funnel to the budgetary estimate.
This occurs when the scope has become much clearer. Perhaps you've had a few deep discovery meetings, but the final guardrails are still a bit in flux.
You provide a tighter number, say $25,000, but the document must explicitly state that this number is entirely contingent on the final, approved design concepts and the lock of the creative brief.
And finally, at the narrow bottom of the funnel, we have the definitive estimate.
This is the heavyweight document. It is highly detailed and incredibly time-consuming to create. You only generate the definitive estimate once the full scope is locked in stone, Every single deliverable is exactly quantified, your team is fully assembled, and a comprehensive work breakdown structure is complete.
This is the contract number. This is the document you go to battle with, and it is the baseline against which all future change orders are judged.
Exactly.
Okay, let's fast forward to segment 4. The definitive estimate is signed. The client didn't gasp. No one is bleeding from revisions. Everyone is happy. Now, how does the actual transaction of capital happen in a way that best suits both parties and mitigates risk? The text outlines 8 specific payment strategies, and I want us to spend dedicated time exploring the mechanics of each of these.
Let's break them down. Strategy number 1 is the fixed fee.
This feels like the classic standard. You agree to a total set fee, let's say $10,000. You invoice 50% upfront before a single sketch is drawn, and the remaining 50% upon final completion and delivery of the files. Any hard expenses, like stock photography, are billed at the end. When is this the right move?
The fixed fee is your bread and butter for small to medium-sized projects that have incredibly clear, concrete deliverables. A standard 5-page brochure website, a business card, and letterhead package.
The scope is tight, the timeline is relatively short, and the 50% upfront payment completely protects the designer from taking on all the initial financial risk of the labor.
Yes. Strategy number 2, progress payment.
How does this differ?
The progress payment strategy is designed for larger, sprawling projects. Let's say you are executing a massive 6-month corporate rebrand. You cannot wait 6 months for that final 50% payment. Your business will starve to death in the interim.
So you break the massive project into sequential phases. Phase 1, research and discovery. Upon approval of that phase, you invoice $10.
Phase 2, concept generation, invoice $15K. Phase 3, final production, invoice $15K. You bill as each major milestone is conquered and approved. Alternatively, if the project is fluid, you can base progress payments simply on the calendar billing a fixed installment on the first of every month until the project total is fully paid.
Strategy number 3 is called modular. This sounds similar to progress payments. What is the distinction?
Progress implies sequential dependent work. You cannot logically execute phase 2 until phase 1 is finished. Modular, however, is about dividing a massive, intimidating project into smaller, entirely separate a la carte contracts.
Let's say a sprawling resort is launching. You contract and execute their brand identity in January as one distinct job. Then they decide to tackle the website in June as a completely separate modular contract and the physical interior signage in August as another.
It breaks the terrifying financial burden up for the client, and crucially, it keeps the designer from being locked into a massive monolithic contract that drags on for years and traps their bandwidth.
That makes perfect sense. Strategy number 4, retainer. I feel like this word is whispered in freelance circles like it's the holy grail.
It is the holy grail because it provides the one thing independent freelancers desperately crave: predictable, guaranteed cash flow. In a retainer agreement, the client agrees to pay a fixed monthly fee, say $4,000 every single month, in exchange for a specific, strictly defined amount of ongoing work or guaranteed availability.
It is perfect for clients who need continuous, reliable support. For example, a marketing department that needs a new email template designed every single week, or a regional magazine that needs monthly layout updates.
It guarantees the designer a baseline income, and it guarantees the client priority access to the designer without having to negotiate a new contract every Tuesday.
Strategy number 5 is hourly. We touched on this during budgeting, but in this structure, it's completely open-ended. The client simply pays your fixed rate for every single hour worked until the project is done.
And it is incredibly dangerous if not managed with absolute military precision. It requires meticulous, obsessive record-keeping and time-tracking software. It is usually best deployed for high-level consulting or for chaotic projects where the client simply cannot define the scope and you wisely refuse to take the risk of a fixed fee.
The text notes a common client defense mechanism here. They will often request a not-to-exceed ceiling. They will say, "We agree to pay hourly, but you must legally stop working and alert us the second you hit 50 hours.
Which is fair. Strategy number 6, deferred.
This sounds utterly terrifying. The designer and client negotiate a fee, but the actual payment is deferred until a mutually agreed upon date far in the future. Why on earth would a rational designer agree to this?
You are right to be terrified. It is extremely risky for the designer. You are essentially acting as an unsecured, zero-interest lender to your client. You deploy the strategy almost exclusively with early-stage, aggressive startups that have zero cash on hand now, but are anticipating a massive venture capital funding round or a highly lucrative product launch in 6 months.
And here is the absolute crucial caveat that you must understand. Because you are taking on massive bank-level risk, the deferred fee must be negotiated significantly higher than your standard rate. If your normal fee is $10,000, the deferred fee might be $18,000.
You charge a heavy premium for absorbing the risk of them potentially going bankrupt before they pay you.
High risk requires high reward, which bleeds perfectly into strategy number 7, profit participation.
This is true skin in the game. You agree to a drastically lower upfront fee, maybe you just charge your absolute breaking rate to cover your rent and electricity, but in exchange you contractually secure a percentage cut of the ongoing business profits generated by the product you designed.
This ties the design's effectiveness directly to the client's sales. It's a fantastic model for product designers or packaging designers. If you design the branding for a revolutionary new beverage, and it becomes a national sensation, your profit percentage will yield far more wealth than your standard hourly rate ever could have.
But if the beverage flops and sells nothing, you essentially work for pennies.
And finally, strategy number 8, trade or barter, getting paid in client services or physical products instead of actual cash.
This happens constantly with lifestyle clients. You are approached by a boutique luxury hotel, a high-end restaurant, or a specialized dental clinic.
I will design your entire e-commerce website if you completely reconstruct my teeth.
Exactly. It can be a very beneficial arrangement. But there is a massive, incredibly dangerous trap here that the text's expert note highlights. When you are calculating the fairness of the trade, you must always calculate the value based on the wholesale cost of the client's goods, not the retail price tag.
Walk me through the math of that. Why does that distinction matter so much?
Let's say you design a custom typography logo that you would normally bill at $3,000. The client owns a high-end furniture store and offers to trade you a beautiful leather sofa that has a retail price tag of $3,000 on the showroom floor. Feels like a perfectly even dollar-for-dollar trade, right?
It does.
Wrong. That sofa probably only cost the client $1,000 to manufacture or buy wholesale from their supplier. The other $2,000 is their retail markup. If you accept the retail value, you are essentially giving them $3,000 worth of your actual hard labor for something that only cost them $1,000 of real, tangible value.
To make it a fair, equitable trade, you should be getting $3,000 worth of goods at their wholesale cost, which might mean you get the sofa, a matching chair, and a coffee table. It completely changes the financial dynamic of the barter.
It does. It's crucial.
That is a phenomenal, fundamental insight that I guarantee saves someone listening thousands of dollars.
Wow. Okay. Let's move to segment 5, the final stage of the timeline. The estimate was approved, the payment strategy was flawlessly executed, the work is done, and the final check has successfully cleared your bank account. The digital artwork files are delivered via download link. Everyone is high-fiving.
But the complex legal relationship with that specific creative work is just beginning, which brings us back to the bombshell from the beginning of the deep dive. Who actually owns the thing you just made? Let's decode intellectual property and licensing.
This is the arena where designers routinely, tragically, get taken advantage of by massive corporations, simply because they do not understand the underlying law of their own profession. Let's start with the absolute bedrock basics of intellectual property, or IP. The text legally defines IP as the creations of the mind, inventions, literary works, and in our case, artistic works and designs. And here is the golden rule, specifically noted for the United States and Canada in the text. The creator of the work owns the creative work, automatically, by default. The moment you save the file, the copyright belongs to you. It is the absolute cornerstone of copyright protection.
I really want to pause and emphasize this because it breaks people's brains. If a massive music festival hires me and they write me a check for $10,000 to design their official main stage poster, and I email them the final print-ready digital files, they do not automatically own that artwork.
Exactly. They do not own the artwork, nor do they own the copyright unless there is a specific, highly detailed written contract in place that legally transfers that ownership from you to them.
What they have purchased with that $10,000 by default is merely the right to use that artwork for the specific limited purpose you discussed during the brief, in this case, printing the festival poster.
They've absolutely not purchased the right. to take your central illustration from that poster, slap it on 100,000 t-shirts, turn it into a 3D mascot, and sell merchandise globally for massive profit, unless you explicitly granted them those extended rights in a written contract. You, the human creator, retain the ultimate copyright.
That is a staggering realization. But corporate clients aren't naive. They have massive legal departments. They know this rule exists, which brings us to the most dangerous, dreaded phrase in the freelance design world: work for hire.
Yes. Work for hire is a highly specific legal standard in the United States. It is a legally binding written agreement where the designer signs a document stating that the client legally becomes the undisputed creator and total absolute owner of the work from the moment of inception.
You are essentially legally erasing yourself from existence as the creator of the art.
Yeah.
To use an analogy, standard IP ownership is like owning an apartment building. The client is just signing a 12-month lease to rent one specific unit. They can live there, they can put their furniture in it, but they can't knock down the walls or rent it out to someone else. A work-for-hire agreement is handing them the deed to the entire building forever and walking away.
That is the perfect metaphor. You are selling the farm. So if a corporate client demands a work-for-hire contract, and many will refuse to work with you unless you sign one hard, what should a designer do? You don't necessarily have to run away, but your price must radically adjust.
Because if you sign a work-for-hire agreement for a simple pamphlet illustration, that client can take that illustration, blow it up onto a Times Square billboard, use it in a national television campaign 10 years from now, and syndicate it globally, and they will never ever have to pay you another single dime.
You surrendered all future revenue. Therefore, the fee for handing over the deed to the building must be significantly exponentially higher than the fee for just renting a patch of grass for a weekend.
So, assuming you are in a normal situation, you aren't doing a work-for-hire, and you are wisely holding on to your copyright, how do you actually calculate the value of the usage rights you are granting to the client? How do you price the rent? The text gives us 5 key variables to scale the fee.
When you are calculating the material financial worth of usage rights, you have to examine the scale and impact of the client's intended use. Variable number 1 is category and media. Is this illustration going to be printed once in a local free neighborhood newspaper, or is it going to be the unskippable splash screen for a global multi-billion-dollar mobile app?
Variable number 2 is geographic distribution. Are they buying the rights to use this image solely within the borders of North America, or are they demanding worldwide global usage rights?
Variable number 3 is the purpose of use. Is this infographic being used internally for a boring corporate HR training module, or is it the primary visual anchor for a multi-million-dollar external consumer ad campaign? The exposure dictates the value.
Variable number 4 is duration. Are they buying the rights to use this image for a limited window of 1 year, 5 years? Or are they asking for use in perpetuity, meaning forever?
And finally, variable number 5 is quantity. Are they printing 500 limited copies of this brochure, or are they printing 5 million copies? All of these factors act as multipliers on your base fee. The broader the rights, the wider the geography, and the longer the duration, the higher the price of the lease.
This precise scaling leads us to the 2 main forms of licensing options that designers use to monetize their retained intellectual property over time.
The first is use-based licensing. This is incredibly common for commercial photographers and professional illustrators. The compensation is based entirely on how the work is used, calculated using those 5 factors we just discussed. It is usually a fixed lump sum fee paid before the work is ever published.
And crucially, if the client comes back 2 years later and wants to use that exact same illustration for a brand new, unexpected purpose, say, they want to turn the magazine illustration into a jigsaw puzzle that requires a brand new negotiation, a brand new agreement, and a brand new invoice.
The second option is royalty-based licensing. This model is very common for physical product designers, textile designers, or artists creating merchandise. In this model, your compensation is a direct percentage of the net sales of the physical product that incorporates your design. You design a highly intricate pattern for a boutique skimboard deck, and the contract states you get 5% of the net profit of every single board sold.
That sounds incredibly lucrative if the product goes viral, but it requires an immense amount of trust that the client is actually reporting the sales accurately, right?
It requires far more than trust. It requires legal audits. In any royalty agreement, the licensee, the client manufacturing the product, must legally open their internal accounting records to the licensor, the designer, so you or your accountant can verify the actual sales figures. Payments are usually scheduled quarterly.
And because royalties can take months or years to accumulate, a savvy designer will often negotiate in advance, a guaranteed lump sum paid upfront before production begins, which is then gradually deducted from your future royalty payouts. This ensures you get something to pay your rent for your initial labor, even if the product ultimately fails in the market.
Yes, never work entirely on spec if you can avoid it.
What an incredibly dense, demanding, and ultimately empowering landscape we have covered today. Let's recap this massive journey. We started by staring at the terrifying blank canvas, and we realized the absolute non-negotiable necessity of the rigorous creative brief to prevent the garbage in, garbage out disaster.
We learned how to build that brief, step-by-step, pillar by pillar, to protect our time, uncover hidden business threats, and align our art with the client's real strategic objectives.
We then dug deep into the uncomfortable math of knowing your actual break-even floor and your published optimal numbers, and we learned why you shouldn't panic if your price isn't the lowest bid on the table.
We navigated the incredibly awkward, psychologically fraught money conversations. We learned how to deploy change orders, how to handle the "we can't afford it" objections by reducing scope rather than rate, and how to finally plug the leaky faucet of endless profit-draining revisions.
We explored how to actually structure the flow of capital, moving from progress milestones to retainers to profit participation, ensuring healthy cash flow for your business.
And finally, we demystified the often misunderstood legal reality of intellectual property. We broke down the immense danger of work-for-hire contracts, and we explored how to properly calculate and license your usage rights so you aren't leaving massive amounts of money on the corporate table.
If you absorb this framework, you are now armed not just to be a phenomenal creative force, but to treat your creativity like the serious, highly profitable business enterprise it truly is.
It is the armor every creative needs. But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final, somewhat provocative thought to ponder something that builds on the foundation of this source material, but looks directly into the chaotic, immediate future.
Okay, I'm ready.
We spent a lot of time today talking about intellectual property. IP is defined legally and historically as the creations of the human mind, meaning the copyright belongs to the human creator. But right now, we are accelerating into an era where artificial intelligence is becoming a direct, active collaborator in our studios.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
As AI systems begin generating high-fidelity visuals and copywriting based purely on our strategic prompts derived from these very creative briefs, we have to ask ourselves a terrifying question. How will these standard contract forms and these centuries-old copyright laws survive?
That's a huge question.
When the lines between the human designer's strategy, the software's generation, and the client's original input become utterly indistinguishable, who actually owns the deed to the apartment building? It is a wild, legally ambiguous frontier, and it's a reality every single designer listening to this will soon have to face in their own contracts.
That is a staggering question, and it completely disrupts the current framework. Perhaps that is a topic we will have to unpack in a whole other deep dive down the line. To you, our listener, thank you so much for joining us on this exhaustive deep dive. I hope you feel equipped, protected, and ready to tackle that blank canvas with a rock-solid contract in hand.
Remember to engage with the links provided. Grab your physical copy of Graphic Design Reference plus specification through the QR code on screen or the link below. You will absolutely not regret having this reference manual on your desk when the legal questions arise.
Keep designing, keep fiercely valuing your work, and we will see you on the next deep dive.